Good morning. It is Friday morning where I am filming this, which means it's my weekly wrap up. I realize you won't see this till Saturday, but my Friday's starting out well because I just did this whole video without recording. So yeah, it's been quite a week. It's been Halloween. My kids did go trick-or-treating. My daughter went as Daphne from the Scooby Gang, excuse me. And my son went as what we are calling the Monk of Doom. So that was happening. Today I am making my Christmas cake. I've actually been soaking my fruit for 3 days. So today I'm making the cake and then we'll start feeding it with spiced rum every 3 days or so until Christmas. So we'll get really buzzed from this cake. This is actually the first time I've done this. Growing up, I remember my mom really liked fruitcake, but she never made it. So I'm making it. We're gonna see how it turns out. This may be the only time I do it, or it might be a new tradition. Who knows? But yeah, I'm using Mary Berry's recipe, so we'll see how that goes. So I did want to go through my reading, but I have a question. This is kind of sort of book related. For people whose kids are currently in high school, there's a weird situation with my daughter. She's a freshman in high school, her school library. And I am perplexed as to whether this is a weird thing at her school or if this is just the way school libraries are now. Early in the school year, her ELA class went to the library and they were all supposed to pick out a book that they were supposed to read. They have time each ELA class to read, but you can also read it outside of class and they're supposed to journal. Fabulous assignment. I'm 100% for it. So she got her book, not that it's important, but it was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. And I think that's the title. Anyway, she read it super quickly because she's my daughter. And then she just was carrying this book around and she's already like 2 or 3 books past that now. She has a lot of books in her room she hasn't read yet. I don't know where she gets that. But anyway, so I asked her, why do you still have this book if you're done with it? And she said, because I can't turn it in. And I was like, what? What do you mean you can't turn it in? And she's like, well, the library's never open. What? I go, well, isn't there like a drop slot, where you can like walk by and stick your book in, She said, no, there's no drop slot. So I said, well, this is really weird. I go, when is your library open? She's like, I don't even know. So she goes and she checks and she finds out that, so her school hours, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, are 8:30 to 3:30. On Wednesdays, it's 9 to 3:30. I don't know if the library has a different schedule on Wednesday, but the other days, the school hours are 8:30 to 3:30. The library hours are 8:15 to 3:15, and they're closed for both lunches. So they're really only open 15 minutes before school. And with a lot of kids, you get your stuff. You don't have time to go to the library before school. And I thought that was really weird. The even weirder part of it is that she has her advisory in the library. And for a while, they weren't letting her turn her book in. Now, I will say when I went to her school library, I was underwhelmed. If that's even, I don't want to knock it. I'm just saying that it was not as well stocked as my school library had been, although my school library was open a lot longer and had a drop. I didn't even think it was as well stocked as the elementary or middle school libraries. So are high schools just not using the library anymore? I don't understand this at all. Or is this some way to like get around the book banning thing by just not having a library? I'm very perplexed by this and I want to find it out. So if any of you have any input on that, let me know. And I will say, I recognize things have changed a lot since I was in high school, because I remember in high school, you had all your textbooks and all this, and now they have a Chromebook. Everything's on Chromebook, all their assignments. They do all their research on the internet, which was not a thing that we really did. I mean, I'm that old. So I understand things have changed, but is this library thing, is it just a weird thing about her school, or is it that's the way school libraries are now? I don't know. If you have any insight, let me know. So let me get to my reading here. Let me pull up my spreadsheet. So last week, now you've heard about, because, the month turned in the middle of this week, I spoke a little about these books some of these books in my monthly wrap up, but one of them I will talk more in detail and the other ones I will touch on. The first book I finished this week was The Angel of Rome by Jess Walter. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoy Jess Walter. I think he's fantastic. I think he's an underappreciated author. This is definitely a great collection. I actually also have this on audio. So it's narrated by Julia Whalen and some guy with an Italian name. I don't know. So I may do a re-listen of it. The stories are entertaining enough. I really highly recommend this. And then I finished, okay, so the next one I finished was The Children on the Hill by Jennifer McMahon. And in my monthly wrap up, I said I wasn't going to talk much about it. So let me talk about my problems with this book. This book is a retelling, inspired by, whatever, of Frankenstein, which is one of my favorite stories. I love Frankenstein. I think it's really layered. It's very unexpected. It's not at all what we're told it's about. It says so much. I love Frankenstein. And I like the idea of a retelling. I'm always interested in a retelling. But this one didn't work for me. So, pluses. I really like Jennifer McMahon's writing style. Also plus, the premise of this book I thought was really smart. It's about this brother and sister. They live with their grandmother. Their grandmother is a director, a psychiatrist, and she runs this mental hospital that they live on the grounds of. And so things happen. And one day she brings home this girl and says, she's going to be like your sister. And things happen. Plot ensues. But that's kind of where I really felt it fell apart. And I was really disappointed. The first issue I had with it is Frankenstein is such a rich story. And it seemed to me like she took the most superficial reading of Frankenstein and worked off that. That was really frustrating to me because I think you could do so much with that. And I just felt like this is like, I almost don't feel like she read Frankenstein. I feel like she saw a Frankenstein movie. That's where I kind of get that. The second issue I had was, this is a horror novel, and I do not feel that horror novels have to play fair. So the idea of playing fair is something from the mystery literature world where the author has to give all the information the reader is going to need to solve the mystery to them in the book. They don't have to do it, obviously, but it has to be there. That's playing fair. That's something that's kind of expected in a mystery novel. I don't feel in horror that it is a requirement, but I do think that she tried to play fair. So props to that. Unfortunately, she didn't do it very well. When a really skilled or even a moderately skilled mystery writer plays fair, the clues are presented, but they're presented in a way that you don't pick up on them. That you don't. They're there. They're really well woven into the narrative. Yes, you could probably go by afterwards and like pick them out once you know what the solution is, but it's really hard to find them as you're reading, but they are there. This one, I felt like all the clues were like boom, 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 clue, boom, 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 clue. So when you get to the twists, and it is not a spoiler to say that there are twists in this book, because in novels like this, there are always twists. So you would go into this book expecting twists. There are twists. But when you get to them, they aren't surprising because the clues were so telegraphed from the beginning. And I was really frustrated by that because when I read a book, even if I know there's a twist coming, I want to be surprised by that twist. And I just wasn't. And I wasn't because the twists were really, they weren't like the kind of twist you would expect. It was that she told me ahead of time what she was going to do. And that was really frustrating. My final big issue with this book is, and I'm going to be vague about this because to be too detailed would spoil not only this book, but some other books. The thought behind the ending. I recently read another book that had the same thought in the ending that this one did. The same sort of motivation of the ending. And that other book, which I will not mention, stuck the landing. 10 out of 10. Fantastic. This one, the landing ended on its tush. It was so anticlimactic. I was like, I read the whole book for this. So yeah, that was not a successful book for me. I gave it a C based on the writing style. I would be open to reading more from Jennifer McMahon. If someone who reads her a lot has one that they would recommend, I would be open to considering it. But I did give it points a little bit when I graded it for the writing style and the premise, because I did think the premise was quite good. So the next book I finished was Hateship, Friendship, Courtship, Loveship, Marriage, by Alice Munro. Like The Angel of Rome, I've been talking about this one for a while because I started it as part of Short Story September, which is now Short Story the Rest of My Life, apparently. Really enjoyed this. Alice Munro is an author who is challenging. I don't want to say this, I mean this in a very good way, but challenging as a short story writer. Her short stories are so layered. And she says so much in so little space. I know I have to read these stories again because I only scratch the surface of what she was trying to say. And I think that her stories are meant to be read repeatedly. So this is one that I will definitely pick up. As I said in my monthly wrap up, I don't know if this will be the copy I pick up because this came from a little free library and it's kind of beat up. And I have 2 of her other collections, or her other 2 collections, Runaway and Dear Life, that have a different cover style, and they're the same cover style for both of them. And there is an edition of this that has the same cover style. I'm not super precious about covers, but I would kind of like all 3 of those to match. So if I can get a nice, good quality used copy of that edition, I'm going to send this one back to the little free library and use that other one. And then I did have my DNF, which again, as I said in my monthly wrap up, it was not about the book. It was Good Bad Girl by Alice Feeney. I just started reading it on Halloween, and apparently my mind had already jumped forward to Nonfiction November because I started reading this and I said, you know, I don't want to read this kind of book right now. It had nothing to do with the book. I didn't get far enough to have any opinions about the book. So I will pick it up at some point in the future, but I'm just wasn't for me at the moment. And then finally, yesterday, I finally finished. And I say finally because I don't know why it took me so long to finish this book, but the A.B.C. Murders by Agatha Christie. Part of the reason why it took me so long is I had some coffee issues during the week. My husband broke our coffee pot. So I went a day or 2 without coffee and I kept falling asleep trying to read it. Not because of the book, but because I had no caffeine in my system. But I like this one. It's just a little different because this is a serial killer story as opposed to just like a one-off murder. There is a murderer. I'm going to have to reread this one though, because my mind, there were just things going on. Had nothing to do with the book. I enjoyed what I read. I just think that I'm missing a lot of it, but I will definitely, I don't know if I'm going to see this adaptation though. The one with John Malkovich. I heard it's god awful. And there's part of me that wants to see how bad it is, but there's also another part of me that's like, no, I don't want that in my life. So we'll see. So I finished that. What I am currently reading. Okay. So let me get my piles here. So my reading's a little bit weird right now, and I will tell you why. So first of all, I am still reading The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope. Yes, this is an October book. No, I did not finish it in October. I just got behind when I was sick and I just didn't catch up. And I'm reading half an hour a day. I'm getting there slowly. So there you go. I've said enough about that. I'm still reading Romance Stories by Jhumpa Lahiri. I'm not putting this one in with my pile of collections that's next to my toilet, but I'm reading this kind of separately on its own. I am loving it, but I'm also savoring it. So I'm going through it kind of slowly. And then yesterday I started this book, Mortal Monarchs, 1,000 Years of Royal Death. So this is for Nonfiction November, and it is for display. And when I said that, people are like, I don't think my idea behind it for being display is that when monarchs die, you always have the fancy sarcophagi, their grave sites are always fancy. There's usually some kind of lying in state. So there's that display, but I have so far read the first one. So it starts with Harold Godwinson, who was pre-William the Conqueror. And then it originally went to George VI, where it ended with the lines, Queen Elizabeth II has been the longest reigning of all the British monarchs, celebrating 70 years on the throne in 2022. Long live the Queen. So here's the thing about this book though. Sorry, I had to look something up first. So that's how the book originally ended, with like, yep, George III is dead, and now long live the Queen, right? This book was published, like the copies had been printed. They just hadn't hit the shelves yet. But it was officially published on September 29th, 2022, which was exactly 3 weeks after the death of Queen Elizabeth. So that long live the Queen part kind of didn't work so well. So when it came out paperback, she wrote another chapter on Queen Elizabeth II. So it goes from Harold Godwinson to Queen QE2. And yes, it does end with the lines, long live the king. So I've only read the first one, which is Harold Godwinson. And in that, I realized there's more to display. There's a lot of different ways of displaying because we're told stories about, especially long ago monarchs, of their deaths. Harold Godwinson has long been believed because on the Bayeux Tapestry, they show him with an arrow in his eye. Like that's how he died. And she goes into great graphic detail on how that may not be. So there's the display of how someone died because that's a heroic death. he was really actually chopped up to pieces. So you. But then there's also the truth. So there's another version of displaying this. This book is a really easy to pick up, put down kind of book. Like each monarch has probably less than 10 pages where she goes through their deaths and medically what happened. Suzie Edge is a doctor, and then she went back to school to become a historian. Interesting career path, but I'm all for it. Check her out on TikTok. She's awesome. So this is a pick up, put down book. This is not a book I would just sit down and read for half an hour. Because of that, this is why my reading is, this is one of the reasons why my reading's a little weird right now. So anyway, that's what I have in print. Ebook. Now, where's my print ebook? So this is not ebook, obviously. This is a print book, but I'm reading in cold blood my ebook. And I had on I normally read my ebook 2 places specifically. I read it when I'm waiting to pick my daughter up, because high school parking lots are hell. I have to get there like 40 minutes early. So I have 40 minutes of reading time. It's great. And then I read an ebook before I go to bed. I realized the first day that I started this, I want to read this book before bed. So I'm only reading it during the day, whether that's picking my daughter up or if I'm someplace else during the day. And even then I might not be reading it. But so I don't read this one everywhere. I did still need a book to read at night. So I then started The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. The next Book Cougars read along is Pip Williams' next book, which is The Bookbinder. I think it has a different title in different countries, but in the US it's The Bookbinder. And apparently there's some commonality between the 2 books. So I decided, I already had this book. So I decided, oh, I'll just read this now. This is my bedtime book. But I'm also kind of reading it right now, kind of during the day when I would normally read a print book besides the Trollope. It's very confusing, I know. Just because I'm waiting for my Hold of Jesus and John Wayne to come in. So I'm kind of doing that then. That's why my reading is weird. It's just the kind of books that I'm reading right now and sort of some limitations of the books themselves. So In Cold Blood and The Dictionary of Lost Words are my ebooks. And then I have to go back here because I switched over my Goodreads to get the date for, there we go. That on audio, I am listening to Platonic, How the Science of Attachment Can Help You Make and Keep Friends by Marisa J. Franco, Ph.D. I think it's very important to include the Ph.D. because she worked very hard to get it and she should have it there. This is also for Nonfiction November. This is my web prompt. In Cold Blood, I'm not doing that for a prompt, but it is obviously nonfiction. Why don't I bring this pen around? Sorry. But this Platonic is for web because you think your social web, your web of friends. It's interesting. It's a lot of like personal stories, and I wish it was a little bit more into the psychology instead of just so many stories to illustrate what she's talking about. Because I do think you need to have some. But I also think maybe a discussion of the psychology, a little bit more of the discussion of the psychology and a little bit less of the anecdotal stories would be a better balance. Audio, Dr. Franco reads it herself. She does fine. She's not a professional audiobook narrator. So, there is that. She does great for who she is. So there you go. My complaint is not about the book. My complaint is that I have an Audible copy of it and I hate the Audible app because I can't tell what percentage I'm at. It's just a pain in the behind. Audible, this is one of the reasons why people don't like you. Anyway, so that's what I'm listening to. As for next week, I do have one video coming next week. I have a tag where I'm going to shout out a bunch of people. So shout outs. I almost forgot. This is the first update of the month, and on the first update of the month I want to shout someone out. Shout out a booktuber that I enjoy, a smaller booktuber usually, and today I'm going to talk about Farah at Bookstalgic. I just started following her. She is awesome. She made okay, this is going to make sense because you haven't seen this video yet, but on the Tuesday video I talk about kind of how I have I don't want to say 2 categories, but just sort of how I sort. There are booktubers with whom I have sort of a relationship of some sort, and there's other ones that I like to watch, and yeah, you can move up from there. I don't want to be classist, but I follow too many. Anyway, she made the jump to the upper tier like immediately. I like her. So she just did a really great video about her review of Dracula and her feelings about it, which I really enjoyed. It is a spoiler one. I've not read Dracula, but I know the story, so it didn't really matter. And I think a lot of people know the story, but I really enjoyed watching it. Her viewpoint on it was really interesting, and the way that she kind of talked about it, it just felt like she's sitting right there telling you what she thinks. Definitely recommend Farah, and go check her out. She will be tagged below, so she is my shout out for this month. Okay, we're done with that. Thank you very much. Please let me know down below what you're reading, what nonfiction book, one nonfiction book that you are reading this month. If you aren't reading any nonfiction, that's fine. Just tell me something else you're reading. Like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Feel free to join my Discord. It's easier to have conversations on Discord than it is in the YouTube comments. And I will see you all later. Thanks. Bye-bye.